Hi friends, here we are again. Long time no see. I low-key don't remember how to do this, but one thing about me is that I will always do my monthly wrap-up. I've been feeling very unmotivated to make any other videos, hoping to break that pattern and get back into the swing of things soon. Been a bit stressed recently. Lotus has had some really minor health issues, but still enough to induce a lot of anxiety in me. She was having some skin issues and like over grooming, and once I finally got that kind of figured out and under control, turned out she needed a tooth extracted, so she just got that done the other day and seems to be recovering pretty well. So fingers crossed this is like the last issue for a while for her. I feel so bad having to take her to the vet and, you know, just knowing that she's going through stuff. So send some good vibes her way. She is currently napping on my yoga mat, and I think she might be a little bit annoyed that I'm talking right now. Other than that, things are going pretty well, but like the just motherly anxiety that I feel towards her is so all-consuming that I've just been kind of off recently. But July has passed us by, so we have to talk about the books that I've been reading, and I have been reading still, so that's wonderful. I have almost all literary fiction books here, so if that is also your preferred genre, you should definitely subscribe. And if there's anything that you would like to see me talk about book related, definitely let me know in the comments, because I feel like coming up with ideas has been quite the roadblock for me recently, and I promise I don't usually complain this much. Other than that, we're just gonna get right into it. I always start out with my Storygraph stats for the month. So in July, I read 7 books. That was 1,758 pages. I read 86% fiction and 14% nonfiction, which is an unusually low amount of nonfiction for me, hoping to get into some more nonfiction in August. All 7 of these books are books that I physically own. I did not do any digital reading this month. And I think that that is all that I usually talk about for these stats. So we're actually gonna knock the nonfiction out first. The first book that I read in July was Notes to Joan by Joan Didion. I did not give this book a star rating. I usually give most books star ratings, but I just felt a bit weird trying to assign a rating to this one. I got a lot out of this, so it was definitely a valuable experience for me, but just felt kind of strange to give a number to someone's literal therapy notes, and maybe it's kind of weird to read someone's notes from therapy, but Joan Didion is a author that I really love, and I know there's kind of been some discourse about whether or not this should have been published at all, but curiosity got the best of me, and I'm just gonna trust that the people that decided to publish this did it with her best interest in mind. So if you've been kind of following along on the channel for a while, you'll know that I've read The Year of Magical Thinking twice. I did a reading vlog for my reread of it last summer, and I've also read her other book, Blue Nights, one time. The Year of Magical Thinking is a grief memoir about the loss of Joan Didion's husband, and then Blue Nights is a memoir about the loss of her daughter, Quintana. And even though I, know what occurred with Didion's family, the last pages of this book that talk about Joan losing both her husband and daughter in such a short period of time still just felt like such a gut punch for me. No matter how many times I read and reread those books, it is still just so harrowing to think about. And I think that this book works really well as a companion to both of those memoirs, especially Blue Nights, because I know that some of the criticism that that book has gotten is because of how kind of detached it is. And I feel like this provides a lot of context for that time in her life. And don't get me wrong, even within these like very personal notes, Didion still sounds like Didion. She still has that distinct style, but I just think that we get a lot more insight into the events that happened even throughout her entire life, spanning back to her childhood. And I feel like we kind of get some explanation for why she wrote in the way that she did, why she was so detached and analytical. So I thought that this was a really interesting look into the inner life and mind of an author that I really love. A lot of the conversations in here that she was having with her therapist about love and worry and how those things go together for her really hit home for me and just made me feel a little bit less alone in how I process certain things. So that really hit hard. I think that a lot of people will be able to get something out of this, some sort of lesson, some sort of comfort. So I do think that this was an important read, maybe a little bit uncomfortable at times, just kind of because it's so personal, but yeah, I'm glad that I read it. I feel like this is gonna be a short video because the two books that I spent the most time with this month are books 3 and 4 in a series, and so I don't really want to get too much into them. I don't want to give anything away, so kind of just have a brief joint review of both of them. But those two books are the last two books in the Neapolitan quartet. We have Those Who Leave and Those Who Stay, as well as The Story of the Lost Child, both by Elena Ferrante. I gave both of these 4 stars. Kind of crazy to me that I'm done with this series. It really feels like the end of an era. I have been reading one of these books each summer for the last couple years. So I read the first one, My Brilliant Friend, in 2023, I think. Yeah. And then I read the second one, The Story of a New Name, last year in 2024, and absolutely loved it. I was a little bit uncertain about the series after the first book, but I'm really glad that I continued with it. And once I read book number 3, Those Who Leave and Those Who Stay, I just felt in my heart and soul that I needed to just finish the series this summer. I did not want to wait until 2026 to get to the last book. Elena Ferrante has created such a rich and detailed world within all 4 of these books, and it really has made me wish that I read them all in closer succession. If you are starting the series or thinking about starting the series, I would recommend that maybe you don't read them all one right after another, but I wouldn't wait a year in between like I did. So much information just completely left my brain from last year to this year. Even though I loved the second book so much, you just forget things, especially when you read as much as I do. A lot of what happened was just completely forgotten for me. She does give a lot of context within the books as far as like who the characters are and what happened in the past, so you're not really grasping at straws to remember what happened. But I think that my experience of these last 2 books was really enhanced because I read them one after another. I'm really glad that I decided to finish the series. I definitely want to read all of Elena Ferrante's books. I've read a decent amount of them at this point, but I am looking to get my hands on the last couple that I'm missing. And I really want to finish the TV adaptation of the series. I started it last summer, I think. I didn't get very far, so I want to get back into that and just kind of experience the whole story again. Can you believe that I did all of this in 1 month? I am like so proud of myself. If you know me, you know that I'm not a thick book girl, so the fact that I just went for this is kind of nuts to me. After finishing those behemoths, I wanted something short and sweet and something from an author that has become another one of my favorites, and that is Marie Ndiaye. This is That Time of Year. I rated this 4 stars. This is a pretty short book. I think I finished it in like 2 sittings. The thing I love about Marie's writing is how she can craft such quietly unsettling stories. I wouldn't say that her books are like flat out horror books, but there's just something so eerie about all of them. This book in particular follows a man named Herman, whose wife and child have disappeared in this countryside village that they were vacationing in over the summer. they decided to stay an extra couple of days into the beginning of September, and crazy things start happening in this town after the summer is over. So yeah, his wife and child go out one day and don't come back, and a lot of confusion and isolation and creepiness ensue. I really loved how quick and sharp this was, and how Marie Ndiaye uses language to create just this atmosphere, this really uncomfortable atmosphere, without anything like overtly disturbing happening. It's not gratuitous in any way, it's very understated, and I think it takes a lot of talent to be able to do that. I think that this would be a really great autumn read for like the beginning of September maybe, just because that aligns with the time of year in the story. I would say that this is probably my second favorite book of hers that I've read so far. My Heart Hemmed In is my favorite from her, but this one is probably the runner-up so far. I think she's a really underrated author. If you have not read her before and you like stuff that is a little bit more like literary horror, weird, I would definitely recommend that you check her out. I went for another tiny after finishing that, and actually this is a book that I just purchased, like I think it was last week I picked this up, and that is Killing Stella by Marlen Haushofer. I rated this 4.5 stars. This is my first time reading anything from this author. I also picked up her book The Wall, which has been making its rounds online. I've seen a lot of praise for it, and it seems to be in a similar vein to I Who Have Never Known Men by Jacqueline Hartman. Can anyone count how many times I mention that book on this channel? It's actually kind of crazy. I think that it comes up in every single video that I make, but one of my favorite reads of the year. So I'm excited to pick up The Wall from this author and see how I find that. But since this one's so tiny, I decided to go for it first, and I really enjoyed it. It is a housewife's account of her kind of taking her friend's daughter in and letting her stay at her house. And then the subsequent destruction, both emotionally and like literally physically, of the daughter by the narrator's husband, and the narrator does nothing to really intervene. This is a very cold and dark and bleak story, similar to that time of year. I don't know what kind of mood I was in this month, but I think that this is written in a way that really pulls you into the narrator's spiral as she tries to untangle this disaster that she let happen. She was just very passive about it, and is now kind of starting to come to terms with what happened. So yeah, this had the sharp, focused prose that I really love in a story that's this short. And I would say that it's almost reminiscent of The Dry Heart by Natalia Ginzburg, if you've read and enjoyed that one. I think the writing style and just how much she was able to accomplish in so few pages is very similar to Ginsburg, as well as the darker themes that are explored in both books. So I had a really good time with this one. After that, we have another one that I'm not really going to talk too much about, because once again, it is part of a series, and that is Nana Volume 8. I think that I talked about this series last month. I started watching the anime and am continuing to make my way through the books. I need to get my hands on a copy of Volume 9, but I will be continuing with this as soon as I can. I am really starting to enjoy this so much more. I think watching the show has helped contribute to that, and I just feel like the plot is really starting to, I don't know, the stakes are higher now, so I'm really intrigued to see what happens next here. And we're on to our final book. I can be really quick when I don't actually talk in depth about what I read, I guess. The last book that I read in July was Body Friend by Katherine Brabon. I rated this 4 stars and picked this up because of the cover, because it's just giving summer pool vibes. This is a very meditative and just very quietly impactful depiction of chronic pain and chronic illness. It follows an unnamed narrator in her late 20s, and she's recovering after an operation on her leg. The book mirrors the narrator with 2 other characters, Frida and Sylvia, and they both kind of represent rest and activity, and the ways that the narrator feels pulled to do both, you know. As she's recovering, she feels like she needs to be exercising and moving and pushing her body to the limit. And then on the flip side of it, she also feels like she should be resting and not doing too much and just slowing down. And Frida and Sylvia kind of pull her in those different directions. They kind of represent the extremes. So I was really intrigued by the push and pull of those friendships and the way that they impacted the narrator and how she felt about her body and how she felt in her body. I thought that the writing in here was very like soft and flowy, and I think it was a really good exploration of how language can be very limiting, especially whenever we're talking about pain and how it feels to be in your body. This book really did make me want to go swimming and go for a walk, though. There's a lot of that going on here. And I don't know, I just thought that it was very, very beautiful writing. I think that the blurb on the front here from Icicle Savas really sums things up nicely. It says, "At once a feverish investigation of the body's limits and a hypnotic account of city walks, swimming, and friendship. I loved the intimacy of these pages." And I think that it was a very intimate book, and I really enjoyed that. It was just very slow paced, not a ton happens plot-wise, but the writing was nice, the vibes were good, and I haven't read very much chronic illness related novels, so yeah, this one was a good one. That's all I got today for you guys. Sorry that this was like not very in-depth. I just think it's kind of hard to talk about series in my wrap-ups because I don't want to give anything away. I feel like my reviews are getting a little bit shorter and more to the point as I've been writing them. So I don't know if that's a good or bad thing, but that is what we're working with. I will hopefully see you guys very soon. Let me know if you read any bangers in July, and let me know if you read any stinkers too. I would love to know what you guys have been up to. So yeah, see you soon. I'm gonna pay the cat tax for anybody that has stuck around to the end. Is this not the most perfect and amazing creature that you've ever seen? I love her so much, and yeah, like I said, hopefully she will be good as new after she recovers from getting this tooth pulled. That poor girl. She's so comfy on the yoga mat.